Is there a motion to move to open session? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposition? We are in open session.
All right, we're going to continue with the Woodbridge Middle School, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Green.
Okay, so we're going to cover a lot of what was covered already from the other schools, our strategic plan goals, specific pieces of data, some sample questions. I did include a few other questions because we take science and social studies, and I did want to share the complexities of those tests. We'll look at attendance data, our Edmonton data, discipline data. So our first strategic plan goal is around achievement, and we do the Edmentum assessment, which is our screener, and all of our kids take it 3 times a year. They do it in math and in reading. Our goal for this is that 50% of our students will increase their Edmentum scale score from fall to spring based on a specific projected growth area. So what we did is we looked at the recommended growth for kids from fall to spring. And because the majority of our kids are not anywhere close to being proficient, we are trying to work towards proficiency, but growth is our big word this year, is we're just trying to make sure our kids are growing. We want to close the achievement gap. So with some of our goals, you'll see that that's the focus, is closing the gap that exists. So you can see at the top, and I put it in red just in case you didn't want to have to do all the adding yourself. So at our beginning of school year, 62% of kids are below grade level in math, and 66 are below grade level in ELA. And I could have flipped it and told you who is proficient, but these numbers are more telling. So our second goal is excellence, and we want to increase on-track attendance. Although last school year, when they were figuring our CSI status, our attendance looked like it was a really great percentage. I want to say 94%, 92%, something like that. However, because it was the first year of Infinite Campus, the data was being pulled from the state level, multiple places. No one could figure it out. It benefited us, and that's great. My concern is that we might see a reduction in that this year because it will be pulled appropriately. So we've been really targeting attendance through a number of means. You can see there just we have incentives in place, interventions. We're recognizing student attendance. We're doing some morning announcements with it. We're calling names for drawings. Our PBIS is very attached to attendance right now. The counselors have cohorts that they're monitoring of the kids who are more at risk. We're, doing the 5-day, 10-day, those letters that they have to come out, and they come through Infinite Campus as well, doing all of that stuff. Our visiting teacher is fabulous. She's amazing. She, Ms. Fisher, she does a lot of outreach to the family. She makes the home visits. She has meetings. She's sending little reminders to them. She also shares a lot of resources for us as a staff that I can share out with the teachers on just how to create relationships, because kids come to school for the most part when they don't want to miss anything. So we want to become that school that they don't want to miss.
Current data is that from the beginning of the year?
So currently, as of right now, our attendance data for kids is 95.6%, which is awesome.
Good.
We have like a handful of kids who are in that, pocket. We've been recognizing, and just last week we did a kind of a fun activity with our staff. Any staff that had 92% attendance or higher, because our attendance, I want to say, was in the 70s, staff attendance last year. So we've been really honing in on this as well. In a lot of our conversations with staff, they will say, well, kids don't come to school. It's why our data looks the same. And I tell them they're absolutely right. But you also have to come to school for our data to improve, because if kids aren't here, they don't learn. If you're not here, they don't learn. So we were really trying to hone in on positive attendance for staff. So we did this nice fun celebratory act, and Jordan and I went around with a cart, and the teachers got to pick something that they couldn't see, and we had like slices of pizza and candy bars and treasure box and all kinds, and they loved it. It was a lot of fun. But we're at 92% right now, which is pretty good for us. Our next goal is about respect. And so we're focusing in on the kids who have more referrals. 5 is the number we're looking at. So a lot of times in discipline, there's a lot of early intervention. By the time a teacher writes a referral, they've tried 10 things. So they're not quick to use the referral as the intervention. I think recognizing that the minute you give control away to the disciplinarian or Jordan or myself, you're kind of giving up control of your classroom. So they do a lot of things themselves, but this was our discipline data as of now. So minor infractions are the things that actually are not referable, but they're things that the teachers note. There are things that they're taking care of, or Mr. Norman, our dean, might talk to the kid about it. But you can see that the majority of our kids only have one minor. And so that's good. That means that those early interventions are working. I also did it by grade level. We always expect the sixth grade or the younger grade to come in and have more referrals because it's like so much more freedom than they're used to in elementary school. But at the same time, we do want them to, you know, start to learn the way of middle school. There's so many more transitions. There's more opportunity for them to, you know, experience things that could get them in trouble. We were not happy about our eighth grade data because those are students who have been in the building for 2 years already, and they're the majority of the referrals. So we're doing town hall meetings with students. We do it by grade level. We're very specific to who we talk to and what we talk about. But we want to give the kids the information because their own data is something we've been very focused on this year, is them understanding. There's a lot of pieces of information that represent them as a child. Oftentimes, Terry is not going to know the kids, but when I send her information to prep for high school, all she's going to see is a bunch of numbers. So we've been trying to make our kids more aware of their numbers across the board.
When she saw that number, did you see the whiplash in her head? Wait a minute.
Yeah, we're working on that. So our SBOC data. So again, this is all information I also recently shared with the kids. So we did town hall meetings with each grade level because I really wanted them to see where we were. Data shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be a secret. We should know where we're starting so we know where we're going. But as you can see, we're below the state in all areas except for sixth grade math. We're slightly higher.
I think it's good that you're sharing it with the kids and making the importance. You know, we get the letters that come in the mail as parents, but
Yeah.
you know, how serious do most parents take it? We're kids. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually just had a really fun town hall. The way I present data to kids is I kind of trick them into it. Did you see my? Yeah.
I honestly, when she said it to me, I was like, I was gonna tell you, I thought it was the board one first.
No,
They're
no.
not.
No, I do it in a kid-friendly way. So I put up like the most popular singers, like just pictures, and the most popular football teams and athletes, and just, you know, all kinds of stuff that kids care about. And then we talk about how do we determine who's more successful. And then I introduced to them the idea of data. Like there's data around all of these people. So we did like, who's better, LeBron or Steph? And they're like, you know, all excited in the crowd and stuff. And I said, okay, give me a piece of data to support that. So they're throwing out how many rings they have. We do all this. They're so pumped up about it. And then I bring our data. And they're still pumped up about it, but they're really disappointed actually. There's a lot of like boos and like, you know, they're shocked at where we are. But if they don't know, then they can't help us move. So it's fun, but it's also very, you know, purposeful. So again, in ELA, we're below the state in all areas. End of year, last year SBOC data. So this is school-wide proficiency. You can see the charts and, you know, again, I haven't been someone who's hid from the data. I shared it with the parents. I want them to know where we are because I want them to celebrate with us when we're better, you know, which we will be. So clearly though, we're behind. I actually, while I was sitting here listening to Zach, I was writing his data because I'm like, gosh, you know, his fifth grade science is 30% and I'm 13. So I'm just trying to figure out like how we are now. His is at a certain grade level, mine is at a certain grade level. It's very comprehensive. We also know that the science test is not aligned to the standards. The state knows that. They're not doing anything to change it. So we're dealing with what we're dealing with. But, you know, it's one of those things. We still, though, have lots of room to grow. End of year ELA data, as you can see, you know, eighth grade's a little bit higher. Seventh grade, that's an area that for me, I really want to focus. So what we've been doing a lot in walkthroughs this year and in our observations is looking to see, is there a reason seventh grade is lower? Is it something we have to look at with teachers? Is it something to look at the way we group kids? So we're kind of honing in on like why they're so much lower. Math data. And that's not a good trajectory. So we're losing stuff as we go. I will say that we've been talking a lot and we have a lot of good resources with math in my building. And so as Brandon mentioned earlier, it's really fidelity of the curriculum. And I know fidelity is like a bad word, but if we implement a curriculum the way it's meant to be implemented, we're going to see growth. So we've been really pushing on this being a non-negotiable. This is, and we're not suggesting you do small group. We're not suggesting that you implement tier 2 interventions. We also are talking a lot about what that means, because what I'm finding is that it's not necessarily will, it's skill. Our teachers aren't sure. So we have to give them the information up front, because then once we do that, then we can expect things to happen. But until they really understand it themselves, which we realized this year, they didn't fully understand the difference between small group and tier 2 intervention. So our math curriculum, if used right, it's going to help us in a number of ways. I wanted to share this with you because this is what I recently shared with the staff. So this is our CSI report. I just made it kind of user friendly, but ultimately CSI is for the bottom percentage of schools, and it's very heavily targeted at middle schools, and it's not accidental, but for each area and metric that the state looks at, there's a possible number of points. Those points are weighted a certain way. And what I found looking through this, which is why I found like it should be I should be very open with the staff about this, is that there's obvious places we can grow. So proficiency, again, would we love to have all of our kids be proficient? Of course. But we're not there yet. We're going to focus on a growth model. And as we're growing kids, we'll get more proficient kids as well. But I imagine these two areas will be harder for us to increase, but we will increase them. They just won't be fast increases. This is the percentage of our kids who are proficient at their grade level in both ELA and math. And that's 150 of the 500 points that the state uses when they're considering schools for CSI. The next couple levels, so that for me, this is the best part. This is the part where I feel like we can impact this. And what you're going to notice here is that we seem to be growing the bottom percent of kids better than we are growing the top percent of kids. And that tells me a couple of things. One, a lot of times you hear people talk about, oh, they teach to the middle. Well, we teach to the bottom. That means we're leaving a lot of kids out. So our tier 1 instruction has to improve in the sense that we need to make sure that we're planning for the kids in front of us. And Brandon's heard me talk about this a million times, because lesson plans are also, there's a lot of bad words in my building, and lesson plans is also one of them. So, but if we're planning, it's not the what we're planning, it's to whom we're planning for and how. How are we going to get it to them? And that changes every single year because we have different kids in our class every year. But if we can really use our curriculum, and both our ELA curriculum and our math curriculum allow us to scaffold up. And that's where we're failing. We're not scaffolding up. We're not building for the ones who are already on grade level, who are right there. And so that's a huge focus for us right now in PLC, because if you see the percent of expected growth made in ELA. So we are growing kids. Here, this is worth 12.5 points. So not a lot, but these are the lowest quartile. We got 8 points. We're growing the lowest. We are not growing the highest quartile. So we have to focus on that. And you're going to see it's a very similar trend in math. Again, the growth in math altogether, a little less than half the points. Again, we're focused on growth this year. Everyone can grow. We keep talking about that. But if you look, it's again, the lowest kids were growing, but the highest kids were not. And so we're failing a good portion of our kids, which does not then help Terry, because we need to feed her AP, we need to feed her honors, we need to just be at least grade level. So what I'm finding is that in our tier 1 instruction, we need to step it up and make sure that we're planning for the kids in front of us and not just having the attitude of "Ah, they can't, because they can and they will. Attendance, again, we got a lot of points, but I am worried about that one because it wasn't accurate data, but we're in a good place right now. So as long as we keep celebrating that, we keep pushing it and intervening. Science and social studies, you know, these are challenges for us. We only got 3 out of 25 points for science, but we know that the assessment's not aligned to the actual MGSS. Social studies, we're not doing too bad, but we're testing this week for social studies, so we're trying a couple different things to see if we can have a greater impact on that. So I'm anxious to see if that works. This one was shocking to me, and probably everybody in this room has already heard me complain about this, is sick of hearing about it, but I found out recently from our CSI representative with the state that our ML population could potentially always be a struggle for us because kids only have 3 years to exit ML services, and you're probably very aware of this. But because the state, this is a metric, and it's worth 50 points, we only got 7. The minute a student does not exit in 3 years, so let's say a student comes to Zach's school in grade 2, and he gets services for 3 years. If they can't exit him, he comes to my school automatically counting against me because he was not exited. So I'm no longer allowed to count growth for him. I can't even get growth points if I grow that child. I'm only gonna get points once we exit him. And so that's gonna hit me negatively every single time. So this is one that, you know, he was very honest with us that this is an issue. I mean, there's a problem, I would say, with the way we're doing this, but we're in the system right now. And so we're gonna really try and target the places we have room to grow. And there's a lot of stuff we have room to grow. So we will continue to work on that. So here are our sample questions. I know it's small, so you can't really see it, but what I wanted to show you is that the amount of reading the kids have to do, and then the number of questions that they have to tend to, heavy in reading, heavy in understanding the language as well. And oftentimes you're getting those questions, what's the best way? That's a hard question because kids can make sense of like, oh, well, that's a really good way, but what's the best way? So the way we ask the questions is something that we are, just like, you know, the other schools, trying to build questions in our curriculum assessments and in our common assessments that mirror this better. A lot of times what you find is that teachers will make assessments where you take out the ones that are confusing, but we need to leave those in because that's what's happening on the state test. Sample ELA questions as well, just lots of reading, multiple questions for each passage. Math, like they mentioned before, you have to not only be able to do the math, but you have to be able to manipulate the calculator and make sure that you have the decimal in the right place and make sure that you don't put a space after something, because a space, if you accidentally hit the space bar, that makes your question wrong. So there's a lot of just weird things about doing math on a computer. And while, you know, parents will tell you like they really want their kids to have less screen time, we are sometimes forced to have screen time even at school because we have to train them on how to do this work on the computer. But this is a performance task, and so our kids are given like regular test questions, but then they're also given a performance task, and that's where, to your point, Mr. Allen, they try to bring the math into like a real world scenario. What can I maybe use this math for? Well, here, if you have pots or cups stacked up, you have to do all that. So that's how this is. And our curriculum also does it though. So again, I go back to, if we utilize our curriculum the way it's meant to be used, then we'll be much better. One of the issues we have with social studies, and I believe Zach talked about this, is it's a cumulative understanding. It's a bunch of skills that the kids are meant to learn in elementary school. So they learn these skills in elementary school, and then they take those skills and they apply them to North America and South America, or like just Delaware, let's say. It's a specific region. But then when they come to us, then now we're doing it with actually continents. I think Zach is local, like Delaware or maybe US. Yeah. And then we do it with North America and South America. The thing is that they have to understand the skills, the concepts. It's not about, we're teaching you about North America and South America. It's about, do you understand how to read a map, how to use a scale? So if they don't come to us a lot with the skills, then we're teaching the skills prior to teaching the region. And then that becomes a little bit of an issue as well. So I think social studies is going to be something I know that I would love to vertically plan, but down. I'd like to go backwards. I know a lot of times that, you know, we get pushed to the high school, which is important for you, but I need to go backwards. So, but this is social studies. This is science. The kids are given, you can see, so I wanted to show you this at the top because this is how science and social studies are both done. I don't know if you can tell in the upper left corner, there's a question, but then there's like a tab with a 2, 3, and a 4 on it. Each question has 4 tabs. You have to be able to go to a tab and figure out which information do I need from which of these tabs to answer this question. And then the question, these are different questions. So it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot for the kids. You know, because it's not just about, let me read this, let me look at the, you know, the chart, let me see if there's information there. But it's understanding that I might need to use multiple sources and then compare them. And those are all skills we need to build
So
for our
it's
kids.
teaching them testing strategies to this test, so to determine what are the skills needed
Yeah.
to complete this test, and then introduce them in the.
And with, I know with social studies, there was only one released assessment. So the kids were practicing on the same released assessment every time. And at some point you memorize it, you know? So I believe that there's one newly released assessment, but it won't come out until we're closer to that test time. But our department is now building their own stuff to try and create stuff that we can help the kids do. And, you know, as you probably know, there's not really a social studies curriculum. There's resources provided by the state. Some are great, some aren't great, but we're working with what we have. And we have the teachers doing a lot of the work in PLC.
So how much time are you having to spend on teaching how to use the computer usually?
So the teachers use the Chromebooks each day. I mean, our kids are like one-to-one, everybody gets a Chromebook, so they are using them each day. Creating our own resources is now happening in PLC pretty regularly. We're very blessed because we have Miss Rust who comes in and pushes in. She's a social studies expert. She knows the materials. So she's helping a lot, and my department love her. So they're very motivated to do whatever she asks. So it's a great thing for me because they're a tough crowd, but we're getting there. But the fact that we have to create our own resources is a little bit frustrating for them because the state should give us those things, but you know, we can't wait for them. So we got to do it ourselves. So at Woodbridge Middle, we recognize that there is a problem in tier 1 instruction. And when we say tier 1 instruction, we're talking about regular classroom instruction that goes to everyone. It's what we should be putting out. And again, these are the things that I've found so far that we needed a better understanding around tiered instruction and what an intervention actually is. A lot of times if you ask teachers like, what intervention are you doing? They're really just taking, okay, so I taught this today, now I'm going to sit with you two and teach it again. And that's not necessarily what we need to happen. We need to know, well, how come you couldn't access this? What prerequisite skill are you missing? Now that's what I'm going to do in my tier 2 intervention. So we've had to talk a lot about that. Lack of rigor in the daily lessons. A lot of our assignments are like write their information, memorization, copy and paste, just here's notes, copy them. And so what we're talking about is if you have $62 and we have 62 minutes in a class, if you have $62, do you want to spend $35 having kids copy notes from a board? No, you don't. It's expensive and you're not getting anything out of it, right? So we're really trying to get the staff to think about what is it I'm doing in class? Is it a high impact? Is it yielding the results I want? And then when we come around and ask, what's your evidence that it's high impact? Show me some data. So we're talking a lot about that kind of stuff. It's a slow process because we're changing minds of grownups so that they can change minds of kids. little differentiation. A lot of times you walk into the classrooms and you see the same thing happening for all kids, unless, like I said, I pull little Brandon and little Terry, and I'm gonna do the same thing again in a smaller group, which probably is not very helpful. We have a lot of kids in tiered intervention at the very beginning of the year. And when I say tiered intervention, the ones who are already recognized as needing more than just tier 1. So they're the ones who need tier 2 or tier 3 intervention. Rachel and Jordan found a rock star for us this year, and they hired Miss Andrews, who is our reading interventionist. She's doing amazing things, and we are already seeing like growth in data. So I'm so excited to see what she does by the end of the year. She's doing tier 3 intervention with literacy. And then our huge focus, which Brandon's helping us with a lot, and the other district coaches, is we're focusing on our alignment between curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Because we need to make sure that if this is what we're teaching, and the end goal is that they know this, do the assignments align? Am I testing them on something that aligns? Because a lot of times those things are disjointed, and then, you know, we're not getting the results we want. And we just need kids, believe it or not, at the middle school level to have more opportunity to practice and discuss things and apply them. Like, I want to hear kids talking. I tell the staff all the time, you guys are going home exhausted, and that's backwards. The kids should go home exhausted, but the teachers are doing most of the work. So we're trying to get kids talking more, discussing more, explaining their thinking. You know, we want them to go home exhausted and need a nap, not us. So how will we do this? I kind of talked about a lot of it already. Specific feedback through walkthroughs. I think we've done like 178 walkthroughs or something like that already this year. We're giving growth feedback. We're giving them feedback in their evaluations, like very specific action items, focusing on specific things that they can actually do pretty quickly, you know, because we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time to turn the ship around. Again, we're focusing on high yield instructional strategies. What are things that make a good impact? Let's do those things, and let's stop doing things that we just might do all the time because we're comfortable with them, but they're not working. So we gotta, you know, throw out some of those tools that we have in our toolbox. Increasing, like I said, tier 1 instruction. We're creating a culture around using and understanding data. We talk about data a lot. Again, I'm talking about it with parents, and I'm talking about it with kids because I want them to understand that this is what we're looking at. We use our PLCs very specifically now. Again, Jordan and Rachel did a great job aligning the schedule so that all of our departments are together and they can do the work that means something to them. So each PLC is focused in a different area, but all working toward the same goal. And then it's all hands on deck this year. Every single person in my building is taking Edmentum data as one of their measures. And that's because literacy is all of our job. And if only 20 people are responsible for it, then we're never gonna grow. So every single teacher in my building, Jordan and I, my case man, everybody's taking some level of student data with Edmentum as one of their goals. So everybody has kind of a hand in it now. We also have a school-wide focus on language and vocabulary. So that is something that, you know, everybody's doing and everyone can do it, whether you're a PE teacher or you are the, you know, business teacher. Everybody's focused on language and vocabulary. James from the high school has been really instrumental in helping us do some PD around how to teach vocabulary because there are great strategies that work. And so we might as well do what works. We're trying to celebrate staff. You know, this has been a challenge for staff. It's anytime you get a new building leader, you know, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress. I came in like on 10, like, guys, come on, let's go. We're gonna do this CSI, you know, and they were like, huh, what? So I've had to like dial it back a little and explain more to them because I don't know what they know. I don't know what they understand. So everything's being shared out in a very honest way. Our data is our data. None of us like it, but we can only go up from here. So we do a lot of like kudos in our newsletter. We're just trying to recognize staff who are doing good things. Sometimes it's things that we do expect them to do, but you got to recognize it because you got to find the small wins. And again, like we're focused big time on staff attendance because I know coming in, Rachel and Jordan both told me that that was a big issue in our building, is staff not coming to work, so we're focused on that as well. And I believe that, you know, at the end of the year, we're gonna have lots of great stuff to celebrate. Getting there, we're all gonna be dirty. It's gonna be, we're gonna get dirty, but, we can do it, so. Any questions?
Thank you. No, good job, thank you. We'll turn over to high school.
You could have said, stand.
I don't have any, but I would want to get it up there first. Okay.
Okay, these are the basic topics that we'll cover. I'll go into details about some of them more than others. But that's because one will lead to another, and so it makes more sense to cover it in one place, even though you'll see it in a couple of different places. Okay, so our strategic plan. So we chose 3 goals. The first is this one on improving student achievement. So in education, one of the things that we're always going to look at is student achievement. And at the high school level, things are a little challenging in that respect, because we have different kinds of assessments than everybody else. And, you know, they say the SAT is all of this, and it is great, except that it's a one-time test and it only shows you that glimpse at that moment. And so for us to get started with where our kids are, to do some things that we need to do during the course of the school year with tiering and MTSS processes and all those things, we use the exact path through Edmentum as both our literacy and our math baseline. So at the beginning of the year, we agreed to these goals. So 60% or more of students will achieve a minimum of either a 10% growth or make it over the 1200 mark, which is grade level proficiency. It's hard to say that for high school, right? Because there are so many different courses and expectations, particularly when you get to math. So you'll notice our math goal is a little lower than our English goal. We're going to talk about that because our math scores are lower than our English scores, our reading scores. And so those things all impacted why we chose this as our goal. Thinking about this though, it sort of lines up with our SAT scores. So our reading data in SAT is that we are at 33.53% proficiency. Statewide, they're at 42.05 proficient. So we're getting closer to that state level proficiency. The math, on the other hand, is lower. So for us, our SAT proficiency is 5.29% and statewide is 31.73%. Right, so that means we have some work to do, and we're doing those things. So I want to talk a little bit here, even though I'm going to talk a little bit later. So built into our action plan for this specifically, we're going to take the exact path 3 times during the year, our beginning, our middle, and our end of year data. We are analyzing student data. We've actually set aside time in PLC once a month, 30 minutes dedicated to analyzing student data. And over the course of the year, we're going to be looking at different kinds of data. So sometimes it'll be department assessment data, because I've asked the departments, at least the English department for sure, and the math department, to have so many common assessments so that we can analyze data by grade level and content of what we're talking about. There also, we do administrative learning walks. At the beginning of the year, our whole school agreed to text dependent tasks. So all of the assessments that they take at the high school are text dependent, and a text looks different in math than it does in English or social studies or science, right? In math, it could be a graph, it could be an equation, it could be a real life scenario, and then they have to come up with the equation that describes like exponential growth, right? How would they do those kind of things? So each department has text dependent tasks that they are working on with students. So that's one of the things that we're looking for every time we go into classrooms. Is there, the focus of the lesson, a text dependent task? A text dependent task is not stand and deliver. Okay, so while you may be giving notes and they are a text, they're not really a text dependent task. it's a stand and deliver. And so we're working through those things. We are asking teachers to have a posted objective, all period long. What are we doing and why are we doing it, right? That's your objective. And not only do I need you to have it posted, but I need you to reference it related to what you're doing. How does all of the things that I'm doing, how do all these tasks I'm doing connect to the purpose for what I'm doing? And so we're working through that. That is probably on our walkthroughs currently, the place where we're failing the most, not succeeding the most, but we're getting there. And then the third thing that we're looking at, so after the first marking period, we decided that one of the things we didn't really measure, and that was student engagement. So their participation, their attendance to the task, and task completion, and whether or not they're distracted by things like cell phones. So our folks have made an agreement together that we are not going to have cell phones in class unless there's a task that requires that. And so when we see them, we address them. And I will tell you, and as our district office can say, if they've been through, we have had significantly less. And we are talking to people when we do see them. Because you make everybody else's job harder when you don't enforce the rules too. So, and then we also in math, we have very specific targeted math learning walks. So every month we do specifically just math. So God bless the math people, they get more feedback than anybody else in the building, but there's a reason for that, right? So we're trying to gain some momentum in math. And then over the summer, we met with the Literacy Coalition and developed our literacy plan, which is also helping us to address this. So over the last couple of years, we've done things like focused on writing, we've focused on vocabulary, we've done different parts of all of the things that make up literacy. And this year, we've agreed that folks can either continue to work on things like vocabulary or the writing skills that we've been using in the past, or they can work on the fluency pilot, which we started this year. And we have a number of people who started the fluency pilot, which I'll save that conversation for a little bit later. And additionally, the math leadership team, so all of our administrators and our math coaches and Brandon meet monthly to talk about where we are. So in math, we're specifically looking at fidelity to the curriculum and increasing small group opportunities, right? So that's where we're increasing opportunities for foundational skill development. We're looking at differentiation, right? These kiddos need additional support. These kiddos need acceleration. So we're doing all of those things. And we're also future planning. So we're also looking at once the middle school is increasing in the math, when they get to high school, what are some different trajectories for them in terms of classes that they can take? So more advanced math work. So we're thinking long-term as we're doing that too. And the other thing that we're doing sort of related to this is peer walkthroughs, which we had our first one last week. They just debriefed it on Monday. And I gotta tell you, some great stuff came out of the walkthroughs. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so next, building positive relationships. So this is one of my, this is always an interesting area. It is hard to determine how positive a relationship is, right? How have you actually developed? What are those measurable milestones? And while we've used the things that you'll see here is that submitting these positive referrals for students, those things are great. Sometimes for kids, they're a piece of paper. Sometimes they mean something because they appreciate and attach value to the person that they did them. And so we know that, but this was a starting point. And we've looked, we've also looked a little bit further since we've started our plan. And we have a PBS student leadership team, and they're also providing input for us on how to build better relationships with kids. We've implemented some fun things for staff in order to connect to kids in a different kind of way. So, for instance, last week, for Halloween, they had an opportunity to look at all these great fun pictures of teachers or staff members in their Halloween costumes, you know, all those years ago, and try to figure out who's who. So the one at the top is not me, and everybody guessed it is me. It is absolutely not me, the first picture that was up there. But it was fun for kids to then talk about with each other, like which staff person they thought it was. We also did something super secret. And we're gonna do that super secret thing once a month and see if the kids guess what we're doing. And I think I emailed all of you about that so that you got to see pictures and stuff. So since it's super secret, I won't put it out in the public. We're also looking at different ways to increase school spirit and not just like participating in days that we get to dress differently. We're looking at ways that we can get kids to have like a kids section at games and, you know, wearing the school colors with pride and participating and connecting. So we're looking at a lot of different ways for that. We are using staff differently. So we have 3 paraprofessionals who are connecting with kids individually and small group. 2 of the paraprofessionals are working with kiddos and setting goals related specifically to kids who had high flyer behaviors last year. Those behaviors are down and we're gonna keep having them down. And the other one has started a dance team. So we have a whole new thing. So we're getting different staff and more staff connecting with kids. And so while that wasn't the original goal, like lots of things have developed out of that. And our third one, as I promised you after last year's board meeting, that we are focused on attendance. I have to tell you, one of the best hires that we made a lot of really great hires this year. Let me just be honest, the admin team is amazing. I love my team. I also love the student services team and the main office team. So we've hired a new secretary in the front office and she's fantastic and she's killing it with attendance. She's on it. She's asking kids questions. She's following up with kids. But we also have attendance meetings so that we are working to decrease the number of chronically absent kids. So we're looking at our overall attendance to be 85% or higher all school year. So far, we seem to be on track. We are working in collaboration with Ms. Fisher, our visiting teacher. We have attendance contracts out and we are communicating with those families who've chosen to join our district whose kids are not there yet. So we are trying to work with them. You wanted to be here, we want you here, but we need you here. So we're working through all of those. Exact path data. So with the goals that we set already at the beginning of the year, you can see that for the reading on the left, that we've got about 27% of our kiddos who are already meeting the benchmark, which means we still have 73% of our kiddos who could use some attention there. So what's interesting though, is when you get to grade level proficiency, the top 2 grades are higher than the bottom 2 grades, our lower 2 grades, right? So our underclassmen versus our upperclassmen, that makes sense. By the time you get higher, you should be scoring better, right? The same thing holds true with the math. You can see with the math, interestingly enough, the math says we've got 34% of our kids who meet or exceed. So we're gonna work through what their grade level proficiency is. And then it has our juniors and seniors now. They don't have the same contents math-wise that will be assessed always on the SAT. So that is why those numbers, while they look nice, are not really accurate to what we're going to be seeing. Is there anything else here I want to tell you? And I told you about the how it relates to the SAT already. All right, let's talk about DESA data. We are great at getting kids to participate and take the test. We do that really, really well. We have a great system, we have people. What we don't have super success at is getting kids to pass the exam. Now, the biology exam is an actual end of course exam. So at the end of biology, I should be able to do these things. Right now, we've got 24% of our kiddos who are passing. In social studies, on the other hand, we only have 15% of kids who are passing, and it is cumulative, right? That's an end of grade 11 assessment. It's not a US history assessment. It is all the things assessment. And so sometimes kids don't remember all the things that they learned about civics or all the things that they learned about geography or all the things that they learned about economics by the time they get to this test. But all those things are on this test. So the other thing that we don't get are, we don't have the same kinds of examples that the middle school and the elementary schools do about the clicking and the things and what it looks like. We don't have those examples for our grade level band. And so helping kids to see that, now they've taken it multiple times by the time they get to high school, but we don't have those benefits. And all of the released items are from like 2019 and before. So they don't have any recent released items. And this year is the first year that social studies actually counted for us. I mean, the end of last school year, right? So that's the first time the social studies scores counted for or against us. Okay, all right, so what are we doing? Talked a little bit about the Literacy Coalition. We met over the summer, we made our plan. I gotta tell you, yesterday's meeting with the fluency pilot people after they did not only their peer walkthrough, but have been experimenting with the fluency idea. I know that sounds weird at high school, but what they're doing with fluency is more like a close read. So with fluency, they are reading it at the beginning of the week. And it could be the teacher reads it aloud and then they read it. It could be they read it aloud to see how well they read to start with. But by the time they get to Friday with the reading of it, we're also talking about comprehension. We're also then talking about my expression when I do it. And so what we're seeing is that kids are great and they want to learn to read fast, but they're not always comprehending. And so across the board in all the contents that are participating in this, that's one of the things that they've noticed. And so the next step is then how do we use fluency to increase their ability to comprehend the reading? I will tell you, we do have a math teacher doing this. And what's interesting about the math person who's doing it, they did it in geometry. And I don't know about you guys, but transformations are not something I learned in geometry a million years ago. I did learn a lot of other things, but I didn't learn that. And when you read a passage that describes what kids should be able to do or what it looks like, it is mind blowing. But if you have the pictures and the text, it makes a really big difference in your ability to comprehend what's actually happening there. And so we're looking forward to seeing what we can do with that across more math contents. But right now we only have one person who's participating in the pilot, but it should be really interesting. Like I mentioned before, we have our data PLCs that come up monthly. We are continuing to do our MTSS process. We're looking at all the things related to our kids. So we're looking at each kid in MTSS as a whole kid and not just about their English or math scores, but also about their attendance, their behavior, and all the things. And we talked about the assessment and data use and then collaboration and professional learning. So every time that we have a professional learning day, we spend some time talking with the fluency pilot folks. We're actually coming up with a protocol that more people can utilize next year. And it'll look different depending on your content area, at least a little bit. Okay, that's a wrap for the high school. Questions?
Just a comment. I think last time we were in walkthroughs was at the high school last week, I believe.
Mhm.
And for the first time, we didn't see a cell phone. It's the first time we saw 0 cell phones the whole time. And just could you elaborate on, we didn't go the route of like the pouches at the high school, but could you elaborate on how you guys are utilizing the pouches
I would love to.
in a intervention type one?
Yes. So we had a lot of conversation about how to use the pouches at the high school, and we knew the ninth graders coming in would be used to them, but we knew the rest of the kids would not. And so rather than making everybody do the thing, we're trying to treat the kids like they're an adult or they're getting ready to be an adult and you have choices to make in your life. And so this is one of those things. We have everybody introduced the cell phone policy. Cell phones are not permitted in class, right? Then you get your warning and then we do the next steps. But once the referral goes in, then you come and you see our dean of students, who you can go to ISS or you can give me your phone, or we can put your phone in the pouch. They always choose to go to ISS. If they don't realize it's an ISS, you also get your phone in a pouch. It's a non-negotiable. So either way, your phone is going in a pouch. We haven't had any kids leave who have forgotten that they have a pouch. They managed to find our dean at the end of the day to get their pouch unlocked. We've only had one kiddo who attempted to break out of the pouch, right? But we're using it as a preventative. So instead of, giving you ISS automatically, this is another level of intervention that we're doing. And right now, I think we've only had 2 kids that have had to be told twice and gotten the pouch twice. One was extended days because of his inability to follow through after that first time. So it's working very well. And like I said, we're really on the teachers as well, because if I see it in one class, but I'm not seeing it in anybody else's, what that tells me it's an enforcement in this class, because those kids are also other places during the day. So we're holding everybody accountable.
Lead by example.
Yeah, we're trying.
So another question, you mentioned like high school was heavily SAT, right?
Mhm.
That's like the big thing,
Yes.
SAT, everyone takes it. But what's our percentage of students that are going to college?
I don't know that I have that right off the top of my head. It is. Hmm,
I would think it's probably, a little over 50, I think
Yeah.
10 years past.
I would say it's not more than 75%.
So,
Yeah.
so when you look at these assessments, you have SAT, you have science, you have social studies, you have the end of course in biology for science. And you have a through test of years that should be in social studies. Are any of those grades for kids?
No. And we ask that question, so we ask kids and taking things like the ASVAB, like you. Those are all things you could and should do, but they don't see a value in it. I'm gonna be this, and so that doesn't matter to me. This is what I wanna do with my life. Yeah, so we do struggle with that, their motivation.
It's just a point of, across all the presentations is where is accountability infused into it? That's just a point of it.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of, buy-in or accountability of the student to produce these scores sometimes, but it's a hard objective to achieve, and we appreciate your efforts, maybe that difficult.
Thank you.
Any other questions from high school? We're gonna take a 5-minute break, and then we're gonna have the district office presentation. Remember, we won't be video recording, but we will have audio.
Yeah, we'll do it. Third.
I'm gonna turn it over to Mrs. Kirkland to kick off our district office strategic plan.
All right, so you have several different visuals in front of you. It all has the same purpose, but it's a different way that you can look at what our goals are at the district level. With the graphic that's in front of you, you'll see, like the principals have already discussed, each of our goals, either at the district level or in the buildings, is aligned to a core value of our district. And so you'll see a district office. We are focusing on achievement, excellence, integrity, and service, and they are each linked to an individual group. So we are going to share, as we get to different slides that you'll see in the front. The presentation in the front, you will see action steps that are included within each goal. And so it is different information, but shown to you in different formats, because what you're looking at is what we have shared on our website, which we'll get to.
Which one's good, by the way?
Oh, thanks. We appreciate it. So this just goes over our vision and mission, which is the same in our district and all of our buildings and everything that we're aligned to. Obviously, our core values that we link every goal to. And then an overview of really what is the roadmap of our plan. And so at the district level, obviously, we all collectively oversee different departments, but work together in many ways to achieve these goals. So although all of us will discuss the goals specifically, we all have hands in each other's pockets and working towards these goals, because there's no way that we would be able to meet them without our team, and also how they correlate to the building with some of the work that we're doing with our admin and different curriculums, especially for instruction. And so as we go through them, we'll highlight what those look like. And then we have recently publicized the strategic plan on our website so that our community can see this, because that is a piece of our goal in publicizing this so that people view it. And so if you go to our website under strategic plan, I'll just show you from the front so you know how to get there. So when you go to the menu, under about Woodbridge, you're gonna click on strategic plan. And then here is a little explanation about what is the purpose of a strategic plan, why do we have one? And then how is it linked to our buildings, and what is the expectation on a building level? And then you'll see this graphic, and we felt that this portrayed what our goals are to the public, easy to understand, because we can show a document with a lot of words and a lot of different things. And that's not always the easiest to understand. So this is published there, and then when you go below it, you'll see our building strategic plans. And you are able to then click on each plan, and you will see a highlight graphic of what their goals are, and all of them match.
Yeah, so Kelly, just the kind of, what you guys saw today from each building was kind of the behind the scenes of the goals and how they're gonna do it, their game plan. And what Kelly's showing you is basically, this is a visual of the district in general, for the district office plan, and how all of those core values and those goals for this school year are gonna be attained in a visual for the community to see. So all the spreadsheets and all the, years ago, it was your strategic plan was 5 or 7 years, and it was a big binder, and you had a team meet, and then 5 years later, that team wasn't there. So we really wanted to come up with something that every year we have a template. Every year we have core values that we go after, that a goal is tied to, and every year we evaluate if we met those goals at our admin retreat, and when we set new goals. So some of them may be the same. We're always going to have a financial goal. We're always going to have an academic goal, but they may differ the path that we go. And Kelly and everyone's done a nice job kind of putting this all together. It took a lot of time. It did from each building to do that, but this is a great visual for our community to see. So go ahead, Kelly. I want to steal any more of your time.
Oh, now I'll just add to that a little bit. So Brandon and I have been a part of a principal pipeline program in the state of Delaware. For the past, this is year 3, Brandon.
Yeah, and in that program, it's basically providing professional development to district office staff to be able to support building level administration and key programs and goals within the district. And so this is year 3 for us that we've been in this program, and it's with other districts in the state. And the idea of a strategic plan is not a new idea. But we also wanted to make sure that the goals that we create are achievable, and we actually revisit them and talk about them quite a bit and create action steps that are feasible to meet each year. Whereas opposed to the old mindset of a strategic plan is this 100-page document. And so through that professional development that Brandon and I have been engaging in, we've been provided a lot of support and different ways to see things, and that kind of led us down this path with our buildings and our district, just so that we're doing such great things in our district, and we are very bad at highlighting all of the great things that we are doing, and this is helping us highlight a lot of the good things that we're doing in all programs and in all work groups in our district. So our first goal is achievement. I'll let Brandon discuss this, and then other people obviously will jump in depending on what the action steps are, and the conversation will kind of go from there.
Yeah, so the achievement goal itself, the way it's written, doesn't necessarily contain numbers, and it's not on this, but it's on your document. Just as far as elevating student achievement across all grade levels, I'm not gonna read the whole thing to you, but a lot of what you've heard each building and I talk about today is what's kind of listed here. Some of the action steps that we are putting into place to achieve our goal or completing curriculum review cycles like we discussed this morning, providing high quality professional learning to all of our educators. That's very difficult at times with the number of teachers in different areas. We have like our 926 PD data that we've talked about multiple times today. We have a lot of stuff for ELA, a lot of stuff for math, but sometimes it's hard to tap into all the different content areas at the high school or middle school. So we're constantly trying to figure out ways to do that. I know I met with like my ML staff recently, and we're already thinking ahead to next year, but we can't really put a lot of plans in place until we have our calendar completed for next year to know if we're gonna have that September day again. But looking at, we have about 18% of our student population's ML. Like, is there something that we can do on a larger staff scale on that day next year? Like something that we're considering. So we're always looking at that. And of course, we have several partnerships with our curriculum companies and University of Delaware for that as well. You've heard MTSS many times today, which is our multi-tier support system. That's been in place for 5 years now, I think. And it's in legislation. We continue to tweak it a little bit year to year. We've got great people in place working in that world as far as the data work and interventions and stuff goes in our classrooms. Establishing the PLC structure. So we've always, well, I say always, we've had PLC in place as long as I've been here. But we revamped it a little bit this year. In the past, it was done a little bit differently in each building where it may be a specialist that runs it versus an administrator that runs it. And we didn't really have a document per se that gave us like protocols or procedures for what an effective PLC should look like. As far as what the admin should be done, what the teacher role is, what the specialist role is. So we created that towards the end of last year, shared that this summer with our admin staff during our summer retreat. So that is all in place now. Again, with that, we have clear PLC agendas and areas of our focus. Data reviews is constantly taking place, especially with our MTSS process. Providing feedback and coaching to our admins. Kelly and I plan a lot of the admin PLC things with our district office group, and we constantly trying to help them get better at what they're doing with their evaluation process. Kelly and I do those together, and we spend 2 or 3 days in the fall and 2 or 3 days at the end of the spring meeting with them to discuss their goals and how things are going. And obviously, we're such a tight-knit group and community-wise and close together. We're in our buildings a lot, but we try to set that time aside to really like sit down and talk and look through this stuff with them. And the last piece of it is, our aging technology and plan for replacement. We're very fortunate. Like even though COVID is, something we like to all put behind us, one of the things that it did provide us is the opportunity to have one-to-one devices, which we didn't have in the past. In some cases, we overuse or we underuse either one, but we've been able to maintain and keep them one-to-one for now. That may not always be the case, but we work with Marshall. As of right now, we still are. So we have a plan in place for that. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to share about it. I know you mentioned it, but that's really, a lot of things, like I said, we've already talked about go towards that achievement goal. And so that, I don't know if you wanted to share it or not, but.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a bit about like that. Number 8 is a very large overarching concept of software, hardware, replacement plan. So just give us security, reliability, supportability, and stability. What we've been working on is essentially Bill Sweetley and ECEC replacing Chromebooks in those buildings. So we've got kind of a structured plan per year to do those items. We've replaced the wireless in many of the whole district. We're focusing on server upgrades, which is sort of like the underlying foundation for all of the technology. And we're looking at software that we can save money in operating costs, trying to drive that number down as well. We moved a lot of the files to the cloud, which is going to allow us to have better security and give us more accessibility. And essentially all of this is really creating that stable foundation for learning. So.
Yeah, I think Marshall, you presented to the board last year about a replacement plan and when that starts. And I think it's gonna start probably next year about, devices, replacing them for COVID and what that looks like in each building. We're still trying to do one-to-one devices in the secondary, but maybe backing off a little bit on the elementary to go 1 to 2 or something to that effect. I mean, we think financially that we can achieve this, as long as the state doesn't come in and tell us we have to pay for something else. So we feel confident in that. Marshall's team's done a great job of doing that research and really thinking ahead, because you have to think years down the line when you're doing replacement cycles for 4 campuses. So appreciate your work.
So our goal 2 is about excellence, and this is really aligned to growing your own programs. So we have committed to creating programs in our district that allow for current employees to grow, and whatever that may be. So currently, in the last year, we've developed several programs that are still being developed, have just started. We're revising and adding to. We've applied for grants and the pilot programs. And so we have a lot of things going on right now for our employees to grow within our district. So specifically last year, we applied for a grant for the residency program in the state of Delaware. So the residency program in some colleges and universities has replaced what we know as traditional student teaching. And a residency program is a 1-year program for a student that is in their senior year of an education program that will allow them to be employed by a school district. And during that year, not only are they employed as a paraprofessional in the school district, but they're also completing their student teaching requirements as a resident. So it is awesome for them that they get to work full-time and get the benefits of working full-time in our school district. So we applied for that grant. We were awarded that grant. And as a result, we were able to have 2 residents from that program with an MOU that we have with Del Tech. And Del Tech has a bachelor's of elementary program. So right now we have 2 residents, one at ECEC and one at Phyllis Wheatley, that are employed as paraprofessionals in our school district and are paras in both of their buildings and completing their requirements. And so the goal of that program is hopefully to then employ them next year as a full-time teacher. So that's one program. Another program that we have worked to create is the Rising Blue Raiders Aspiring Assistant Principal Program. And so earlier I discussed how we've been in this principal pipeline program that's been providing professional development to us. And as a result of that program, we received another grant from that program that we've applied for. And that has allowed us to start an aspiring assistant principal program. It is a need in our district to utilize our own resources to help people in various roles that may want to become an assistant principal or an administrator, supervisor in some capacity one day. And so we've developed this program closely with Dave Santor, who we have partnered with quite a bit in a lot of different things. And we rolled it out at the end of last spring and sent out an application process. We had 18 people that had applied for the program, which really surprised us. We did not think that we would get a ton at first in our first year. And so it put us in a position where we had to use the applications to choose who our first cohort would be. And as a result, we chose 13 individuals that had applied, and they are now our first cohort. And so the entire program is focused on different skills and abilities that are necessary to become an assistant principal. And we have different professional development planned throughout the year. And that first cohort is currently going through that and meeting with Dave and Brandon and myself monthly at various things. And we're covering different topics. They will experience different professional development for being an assistant principal, and they will shadow our current admin throughout the year. And then they will participate in an interview process, a mock interview process, which is super important at the end of the year to basically sit in what it feels like to apply for an assistant principal and interview for an assistant principal role at the end of the year. So we're excited for that cohort because we do have interest in our own district of people who do want to become future leaders. And so that will help us develop them. So that's one program. Another program is our para-to-teacher program. And the state, it's called a paraprofessional registered occupation program. And so the state started this program with the Department of Labor last year as a pilot program. And right now there's 2 school districts in our state that are in that pilot program. But I think because I bugged them a lot to be a part of it, they did have one. They had one seat available, and we were lucky enough for them to reach out to us and say that they had the ability for one person from our district if we had someone to participate in the pilot. So of course we jumped on that, and we have a paraprofessional at Phyllis Wheatley that is currently in the education bachelor's of elementary education at Wilmington University. And she's been accepted into that. And the fantastic piece of that entire program is that the Department of Labor will pay for her to go to school to get her bachelor's of elementary education degree as she is working full-time with us as a paraprofessional. And then obviously the goal, just like our residents, is to then employ them as a full-time teacher. So right now, that state program has 15 to 20 seats that will be open for next year. And so we do have a meeting set up with them next week to discuss to be actually in the program. So I'm hopeful that we'll get more seats for that. And then when we do, we will set up a process for current paraprofessionals that are in our district that want to be future teachers, because we have many that are currently going to school to be a teacher, that they can then apply to be in that program. And if they meet the qualifications and are accepted, they would then participate in that program and get their education paid for, which is huge. So big in so many ways and helpful to them, and then hopefully employed. So the goal of a lot of those programs is for our current employees that are not teachers, that can be in programs that are more helpful to become a teacher faster, to then the goal is to then employ them as a teacher. And we're always looking to expand those programs. We've had a lot of discussions about different work groups in our district and how do we grow different work groups and their skills and abilities. And we're working on them as well. This is a starting point, obviously, as we've started in the last year. And we're looking forward to adding more programs. And in addition to that, we just have, we have MOUs with all of our local state universities and colleges to have interns and student teachers and the residents that I discussed. So, you know, we have at any given time 20 to 40 interns, primarily in our elementary schools, because it is an unfortunate thing that most programs are for elementary education, and we do share and discuss that a lot at the state level. There are not many secondary programs. But it is certainly elementary focused, but we take advantage of them if they have them. So we do have several interns that are doing observation hours at both ECEC and Phyllis Wheatley. And so at any given time, there's interns coming and going in both of their buildings. And we also currently have 6 student teachers or specialists in our district that are working with an employee or 2 employees to complete student teaching requirements from an MOU that we have with college or university. So we do have an MOU with Dell State and Wilmington University, Dell Tech and UD, and I'm hoping that we can gain some more with some out of state colleges or universities that are in close proximity to us.
Yeah, Kelly, it's not a program, but just a reminder that we were very intentional about creating dean positions at every campus. We're hopeful that those experiences can help lead to administrative types of responsibilities, leadership responsibilities, but also experiences for them, while also increasing our capacity for our building administrators to focus on instruction and leaving some of the low-level discipline to that experience of the dean. So we'll continue to try to do that. That was a point of emphasis as well.
All right, so goal 3, our focus here is integrity. And again, I know people here in finance and they think district office. I'm just the spearhead because honestly, it's throughout the whole district, and every building, every department is responsible for their own budget, which is why we implemented zero-based budgeting last year. Want to get their input on, look back at your historical spend, what do you need? Really just focusing on not just because we've had it before, we have extra money, we can spend it, and really being intentional about what we're asking for. I'm not going to go too far into internal controls and the processes because that'll be the next presentation. But really just to focus this year on really improving our processes. Because again, it is district wide, right? We have what we see in our discretionary budget. We have all our internal accounts in each of the buildings. Attrition's a big one. Again, you might not see the detail of, but we have our hands in all of it. We want to make sure our processes are strong and we have the right controls in place there. There's also a couple of bullets, I think at the bottom, that with Rachel's new position, I think she wanted to add a little to.
So one of the things that we are evaluating right now is the facility use management across the district. So right now we are kind of relying on more of an old school paper trail that goes through a series of approvers. And it's just not very efficient for any of our administrators when they're trying to manage everything else they have going on. So what we're working on is creating more of a one-stop shop so that I can kind of take more ownership of that and work with the building principals to allow community organizations to use our facilities, but also ensure that we have their certificate of liability insurance on record, that it's active, that we know who is in our building, who is using them, who the sponsor, who's taking ownership, and that the communication is just more clear, and that we're receiving the appropriate payment based on the updated policy for facility use that was implemented last year. So that's something that we're trying to work through, the automation and just more standardized practices so that it'll flow through better.
Okay, goal 4 is service. So right now, when I took on this role, I kind of started reviewing what was in place already for district-wide practices, procedures, and policies. And there are some things that need to be updated. So at the next board meeting, I'll have the new district discipline matrix for your review. Last year, I know it was updated, but there were a number of codes that were left off. So it was really kind of tying the hands of our administrators and our deans on what they could assign for certain infractions. So that will be kind of along with some couple other policies that need to be updated as well. It really should be consistent across each building. I know there will be some differences between elementary and secondary, but the procedures for certain things, for counseling services, for student registration, things like that, need to be consistent across all the buildings. So
parents, staff, and students can all know what to expect. We've hired the district registrar. She's doing phenomenal right now. She's taken over everything officially as of last Friday. Is that right, Kelly?
Yeah.
Yep, as of last Friday. So lots of hours of training on Infinite Campus, things like that. But that will streamline our process as well and making sure that we have those complete student cumulative records going from building to building. So we're not getting to the high school and having key components missing. We've worked like the discipline matrix. I did work with the assistant principals and principals just to make sure that everyone had a say. Things like that, obviously it has to work for them in their building and their students. And then looking at our annual ratings as far as our report card ratings, and then more specifically for special education, where we're scoring and what can be done to bring this up so that we meet our goals.
Any questions on the board? I will say, your notes. Just to our building admin and our district office admin, I do think it's amazing how far you can go and no one, wants the credit for certain things. This group is very selfless and they're really eager to jump in and create things and talk about it, collaborate. We're not operating in silos, and I think it was evident today that our goals have a plan. If you don't have a plan, it's simply a wish that it's gonna happen. We have a plan here, and appreciate all the building level admin and district admin taking the time to create these documents. And I know we'll have success at the end of the year. So appreciate that. Thank you very much. At this time, we have our last presentation. It's gonna be fiscal safeguards. Building level admin, you are more than welcome to stay for this. If you have to get back to your building, it's your professional judgment. But we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Yeah, it's the first person.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Jordan's at the state level.
It's okay to go.
Training today.
Yeah.
Trying to get up.
Thank you for coming, guys. Thank you.
Shannon, it'll be fine.
Taking notes.
On the fire.
I'm supposed to take you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Careful with it.